Yeah.
I'm Connor Fowler.
I'm Matt Smith. Woohoo!
Welcome to welcome to another enlightening episode of Apocalypse Studs. Today we are joined by the peerless Laura Arnold at Reverse Sewer on Instagram. Laura is a photographer, J-Press creative, and easily one of the best dressed people we have had on this show. Laura, how do you do?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Yeah, you're I think the best dressed thing is definitely a true statement.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
we're not yanking your chin, and this is a reputation that you have, so please.
Yeah, we're not a hostile environment in any way, shape, or form. But I understand it's hard to take compliments from people for a lot of people. So yeah, we're happy to have you, and you definitely outdressed both Connor and myself. So.
Which, yeah, at least is the point of the show, is to have people who are better dressed than the losers who host the show.
Yeah, exactly.
So we did just. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say Connor did send me his outfit earlier today, and I thought that was really good.
Nice.
Hey, thank you. Well, Matt was asleep, and so I had no one to ask. So we discussed this a little bit before, but where are you from, Laura, and where do you live now?
So I'm from about 15 minutes from the Philadelphia border, kind of like direct. If you just drew a straight line north of Philadelphia, in that kind of little area, and I'm about 25 to 30 minutes from Center City, Philadelphia. Which I like to clarify, because there are a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I'm from Philly," and then they're from like 2 hours north of it. But yeah, no, I grew up like very close to Philly, in Philly. I know the city very well. And then I left and went to college at Fordham University in the Bronx in 2016, and have kind of been here since then. So now I feel like if people were to ask me like where I'm from now, like a stranger, I would say New York. Like I kind of identify more with New York than Philly, but I do have a soft spot for that.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
yeah,
you
put in the work.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have to ask, as someone that absolutely loves Philadelphia, what is your favorite cheese steak spot?
Well, I think back, like when I actually lived like through high school and stuff, I would have said D'Alessandro's.
Okay.
But now, having gone home and tried a few like places that I guess were up and coming, I feel like now they are actually fully established. But Tony Luke's is pretty good.
Yo, okay. I went to Tony Luke's. That place was fucking crazy.
Yeah. But I would say like it's always like the great debate between Pat's and Gino's, and I just don't think either of them are
they're okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm vegan now, but I have had them in the past, and they're fine.
That would not be the thing to break edge over, though, certainly, right?
No,
if you're gonna eat meat, that would not be the meat to eat.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, in my opinion, they are like the tourist trap of cheesesteaks.
Yeah.
They're like industrial. They're like the capitalist cheesesteak.
Yeah. I mean, I like the place that I always loved was a spot called Giannis. I can't remember what street it was on, but it was close to South Street, and they had like vegetarian shit. And then Govinda's also was pretty solid spot when I was vegetarian for that. But like, yeah, Pat's and Gino's are just kind of like, yeah, they're cheesesteak. They're where everybody goes, but I feel like the real Philadelphians that I know don't eat there at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I feel like I also like have a soft spot for Lee's Hoagies.
Okay.
They like I grew up. They were like down the street from us, so we just always got cheesesteaks from there. But I feel like I'm also like a fun fact is that I'm from the same town as Bradley Cooper,
Oh,
Sure.
and
yeah.
he does a great Philadelphian accent, like speaking through the Lee's Hoagie commercial. So I like that one the most
That's
nostalgically.
yeah, that's kind of awesome. I have a follow-up question to this. Sheets or Wawa?
Oh, I like Wawa.
Okay, solid,
Yeah.
solid. Yeah, it's the
Sheets,
best, dude.
Sheets. The good thing about Sheets is that all of the food is made out of plastic.
Wawa has the best tea selection of anywhere I've ever been in my entire fucking life.
Yeah, I just feel like you can get anything at Wawa. Like
yeah, totally.
that's the one thing that I wish New York had.
Yeah, apparently they're in Florida now, and like I'm in Georgia, but I had no idea they'd expanded there. Like we, when I was in bands, like we would always stop at Wawa when we were in like Virginia to New Jersey and Philly, but it was always just the fucking best.
Yeah.
Also very easy to steal from back in the day. Probably not anymore, but you know. So Laura, if you don't mind, how old are you?
I am 25.
Okay.
Actually, now that I'm like thinking about my birthday, it was I guess my half birthday like
Oh,
10 days ago. So like 25 and a half to be exact.
nice.
Wow. Well, congratulations and happy birthday.
Yeah, same. Also, it's kind of rad that you're like that you're in New York and have been for a while and are still like still in a younger compared to me and Connor type of age.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's an accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like I really have appreciated being here young.
Yeah, totally. What part of New York do you live in? The Bronx still?
No, now after graduation I moved to the East Village.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, where in the East Village? Like general area, obviously.
Like well I guess technically Alphabet City.
Okay, got it.
But I like kind of the border of it, so I would just say the East Village.
Okay, hell yeah. Yeah, I lived in New York for a few years and worked on the Lower East Side. So that was that like anywhere under 14th Street was always like home to me when I was there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a little segment, I guess. The ensemble investigation. We were going to ask you what you wore today.
Yeah, so I feel like when I was talking to you about this earlier and I was saying like I personally think it's kind of like a meh outfit. But I was wearing an old I think it was 90s Land's End rugby, like a gray and burgundy stripe.
Ooh.
The rugbies are really coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Connor's been obsessing about getting a rugby for the past week and a half.
Shout out Zach.
Yeah.
I have way too many rugbies, but that, and then I wore that over a Drake's like white spear point Oxford that is too big for me. I got it like one of my friends was trying to get rid of them and he was like, "Do you just want these?" So like I'm like a 14 and a half neck and this is a 16. So
yeah.
I kind of it's my like wear under something shirt. And then some I don't know the exact style, but like made in USA polo chinos, like olive colored, and then some white sambas. And then
Nice.
yeah, and then I had, if you like going like the full 9 yards, then I had a black barber jacket. I forget the style, but
nice.
Solid.
Well, that's a reasonable outfit for any person to wear.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I was expecting a little more dressed down, I guess.
Okay.
Not like that's dressed up, but I don't know. It's put together.
Right. I guess in my mind, that's like not necessarily, not that I think of everything in terms of like if it's photo worthy, but to me it was kind of like, okay, this is like a solidly average outfit.
Well,
Right. I mean, you're not wearing a tie. You're not wearing a jacket. I mean, you're not wearing like a sport coat. So
yeah, Connor and
yeah,
I were
I
talking about
understand.
this earlier, and like that for a quote unquote dress down look is so much like better than the vast majority of people. Not that I'm judging. Like I truly don't give a shit how people look, but literally 15 talking about this. I saw someone pumping gas in a fucking onesie, like legit pajamas, and I was just like, yeah. There's absolutely no way that someone that gives a shit about clothing, dresses, even for like a very casual day, is gonna be lower than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Like,
would agree with that.
yeah, I understand sweatpants. Like sometimes
You're
you
wearing
wear
separate
sweatpants.
garments.
Yeah.
Garments, and that's good.
Yeah, you're not wearing a onesie and Crocs, so
Right. But it is interesting to me, I guess, how like my perception has changed in terms of like what is dressed up or dressed down, because like in college, like I would wear to class just like a sweatshirt and like the Adidas soccer pants with sneakers, or sweatpants, whereas like now I'm kind of like, oh, I feel very weird
right,
leaving
right.
my apartment wearing sweatpants.
It's what this show is about, which is style evolution and giving a shit.
Yeah. I mean, because when I was a young buck, when I was like 18, I wore a tie every day. I wore a tie and jacket every day for like 5 years. I had this congressional internship, this and that. And I was like, this is how you dress if you are like a man of accomplishment. But of course, not exactly, right? And so I have come back to it in recent months, I guess. And it's interesting, I mean, to see it with different eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I feel like it's always very interesting to hear how, well, I guess one, where people are at in terms of what they consider appropriate or dressed down or casual, or like even like what someone considers like, I guess, quote unquote, like fancy, um depending on where they are in their understanding of clothes generally.
Totally.
Damn, that's a great question. We got to add that.
Yeah.
What is casual? What is casual for you?
Are you actually asking me?
No. We know it's casual for you now, unless
Okay.
you have a different answer. Which we would happily listen to. But if you don't, then we can move on to the next part.
Yeah, I would say that the answer that I had is pretty spot on.
Totally.
Excellent.
Those also, just side note, those old lines in rugbies are like, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, they have such a cool tag. Also,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
they're very I don't know, they're just like a good staple of an item, and then the tag just makes it so much just cooler to me.
Yeah, I miss good tags.
Oh, same here. So
It's just a lot. No, go on.
No, go for it, Connor.
I was just gonna say, it's yet another thing that has fallen by the wayside. Not to be like an old cigar chomper, but like there used to truly be thought put into almost everything, and now look at almost every label looks the same. And I mean that brand to brand, like almost every label looks the same. It's just text. A lot of the times, probably split half and half, serif, sans serif, but it's a shame. It's really a terrible shame, because I guess it used to probably cost something too to put a nice label inside of something.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my input on that.
So Laura, we saw on your Instagram in our endless research every fucking episode that you as a photographer first. So, what did come first, the camera or the clothes?
I mean, well, I guess the camera.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things, but they kind of developed in tandem. But also, I think I used to have my like the little tag thing on Instagram as like content creator or something like that. And I was kind of like, well, that I got to a point where I was kind of like, that seems like, I don't know, maybe less professional than I want it to be. Not that that's not professional, but so then I ended up changing it to photographer. But I remember I got my first like DSLR my freshman year of college, and I didn't really start seriously getting into clothes until my junior year. So I guess in that sense, the camera led the way.
Yeah. And how did you get your start in like the clothing industry?
Kind of by accident. I always jokingly say like I kind of like fell headfirst into everything very quickly and very unexpectedly. Because it kind of started my senior year of college, which was 2020.
Okay.
And that's when
probably a weird time to get into the clothing industry.
Yeah. And it was kind of like one of those things where with the pandemic that it was kind of like one day we were at school and then the next day, literally the next day we were gone. And so then I was kind of like, okay, well, I need something creative to do to kind of like fill that void of wanting to make something. So that's when I started the Instagram, which really kind of at first was just me putting together flat lays of outfits that I would have worn if we weren't all locked down in the middle of Pennsylvania. So, and then I, through that, kind of accidentally fell into what I call, and I guess what people like affiliated with it call like the denim and heritage goods community.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was kind of my really first introduction into clothing as a community. And I like still like right now, even though I'm a bit less involved in that, like that's my favorite group of people on the internet.
Oh, totally.
Because they're all so, generally speaking, they're all so nice to each other and so like non-competitive, and like genuinely there to kind of like help people that just have even like the slightest interest. And so that's when I started kind of connecting with people through that. And then it being my senior year in college, like I at that point was working for New York State, and was kind of pushing them to give me a full-time job after graduating, which they just couldn't really offer. So I was like, okay, I need to find something else to do. And I really like this community and the clothes that they have. So I went and was just kind of messaging around like to people who seemed like they were established professionally in it. And I was like, hey, if you know of anyone looking for help or anything, like I'm like graduating and I want to, at that point I wanted to do like graphic design. And I ended up connecting with this one guy who's my friend now, Charles, who owns CMB Denim. And he was like, yeah, actually, my friend Lucas, like you came up on his radar and he was telling he and his wife about me. And they were like, we would love to have you do a few sketches for like an accessories box that we're putting together. So like not a full-time thing, but also getting some experience. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then I did that project, and then from there developed a very like good friendship with Lucas Fitzpatrick, who is very kind of like well connected in that community. He does a lot of communications and like brand consulting, and
Sure.
he was kind of like, oh yeah, like that like kind of opened the floodgates in terms of meeting people for me, where he was like, yeah, like, do you know this guy, or like this person doing this, like you should talk to like X, Y, and Z. And then I ended up on a panel for like women in like heritage goods and denim, and that's where I met even more people. And then eventually, like through all of those people, I ended up at Upstate Stock in Brooklyn, which makes like they're not really like a fashion brand, but they make knitwear like hats, gloves, scarves, things like that. And
Sure.
and I ended up doing all of the marketing, branding, website building, photography, like graphic design stuff for them. And also kind of around that time, not that I moved on from the denim world, but I initially, like my first love, like how I've kind of talked about briefly like on my blog and like Instagram and stuff, was tweed.
Surely.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, okay, like this denim stuff is great, like all of like the leather and everything, but I still just love wool, and that doesn't really, that's kind of overlooked among those people. So then I kind of took a step back and was like okay, well, I really love like vintage stuff. And at that point, and still to this day, my favorite era is like the 20s and 30s. But I kind of started branching out, like wanting to be more knowledgeable about vintage, which after talking to a few like good friends in the industry and stuff, they're like, really, like the way that you learn is like by being around it. Like they're like, there are very minimal resources that you can kind of read and stuff, but you just have to like immerse yourself. So I was like,
totally.
okay. And then at some point in that, I found Ivy Style, and because one of my friends like recommended their Facebook group as a resource of like, this is a pretty built out community of people that talk about vintage. So I was like, okay. And I was kind of skeptical about it, because I was like, I had the perception of like, oh, it's just going to be a ton of like old curmudgeonly white men who just kind of like sit around and talk about the old days. And so I joined and then kind of like lurked for a while, and saw that a lot of it was people kind of like posting like their outfit of the days and things like that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take a stab at this and just see what feedback I get. And I remember like the outfit that I posted by my standards today was really not great. I think I was wearing like Cole Haan Oxfords with like a burnished toe and like gray flannels. So like that, I got that correct. And then a pretty long like navy jacket. It wasn't a blazer, but like a jacket, and a very thick tie with an Oxford shirt. And now looking back, I'm very surprised by the few negative comments that I got, or criticisms that I got from that outfit, with knowing that crowd now. But at the time,
Are people commenting? Are people commenting?
Yeah.
Jesus.
But so people like post their outfits, and then everybody is either kind of like, oh, like this is great, or they'll be like, this isn't Ivy.
Yeah.
And so all these like old guys were then like, this is great, this is like the best thing I've ever seen, but like you should adjust this and this and this. And so I was kind of like, oh, okay. And then I kind of started viewing the style as more of a puzzle of kind of like, okay, like, well, what exactly does this style look like? Because I think that that's still something that a lot of people, not to sound very judgmental, but a lot of people get wrong, is that just because something fits within like the the itemized list of what makes an Ivy wardrobe, when you put it all together, it could look completely off.
Oh, totally.
So then I kind of made it my mission of being still kind of like recovering from the pandemic and figuring out what I wanted to do, of like, okay, this is going to be like a fun little side quest of actually like perfecting this look. And it kind of went from there. And that's when, through that Facebook group, John Burton, who runs the Ivy Style, now owns the Ivy Style blog, he was the moderator, and he ended up messaging me through Facebook and saying, like, hey, I'm kind of friends with the chief merchandising officer at J-Press, and he asked if I could connect you to, like, just so you guys can like hop on a call. And I was like, oh, like that would be interesting. So I said yes, and that's how I met Robert Scalero, who's now my boss.
Oh,
and,
Robert!
Yeah.
I know him very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, so then it kind of snowballed from there, where he was like, well, what do you do? And I was like, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, the rest is like kind of history, I guess. Like, he was like, well, you seem very interested in the style, which it's hard to find people young and wanting to actually work in the industry now. And so it took a few months, but then he got me an offer letter, and then I left Upstate Stock and went there. And then now I've been there for almost a year.
Robert is hands down one of my favorite people that I've ever met in the clothing industry. I worked for a brand that was based in New York called Epaulet. They're based in LA now.
Yeah.
Robert was basically, we used Southwick for tailored clothing back in the day. And like, Robert is just like the coolest motherfucker that I could imagine, and like so old school New York, and so like one of the only old school guys that actually gets it. So
Yeah.
like that's fucking awesome that he took a chance and like helped you out in that way. That's fucking rad.
Yeah, that's something that I always have a lot of respect and credit him with, is that he like really took a chance, like, because he was basically kind of like, okay, well, like, if you love clothes, I'm gonna have you come on as a merchandising assistant. And I was like, okay, I have absolutely no experience in that, but I'll try my best. And then it just kind of evolved from that. Now it's to the point where I really have very little involvement in the merchandising.
Right. Well, hey, you're the creative voice behind the shit, so that's kind of rad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does J-Press still have like the store on Madison Ave?
Not the heritage store. We, like, within the business, we kind of refer to what is like J-Press as heritage, and then we have the pennant label, and that's kind of how we differentiate between them. So we don't have a heritage store on Madison. It's on 44th, right next to Grand Central and the Yale Club.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But we are opening on I think March 1st, a pennant label store on Madison at like around 58th, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I thought the original one had closed like a few years ago, so I'm glad that they're still trying to do the thing in a physical way.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. A lot of the customers that we get that come into the Yale Club store are always kind of like, oh, I thought you guys disappeared, because I remember the Madison store.
Right.
Then one day that was gone. So
yeah, it's changed a lot in the past decade up that way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny now, like the old Brooks Brothers location. I always say it kind of looks like it's become an old folks home when you look inside, because it's a cafe, but it's like the space is way too large just to be a little cafe.
Right. Yeah, because the old Brooks shop was like 4 floors, 5 floors, something like that.
Yeah.
Like it was huge, and it was such a like sad moment when I heard that closed.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to ask about the style of your photos, which I guess sort of were the beginning, right? We see them in your fit pics, we see them in your portfolio. I was curious what sort of location scouting you're doing. Do you have time of day you like?
Well, I always kind of say that like the photography that I actually shoot is not really reflected by my Instagram because I'm not the one taking those photos.
Sure.
I kind of like my girlfriend and I have kind of like gotten down a system by this point where it's kind of
Oh, I see. I thought it was a
Always
tripod.
helpful to have like an
Yeah.
assistant to do this.
Yeah. Well, I always feel bad because then I'm like, I promise it'll take 10 minutes, or like I'll be like, she'll take a few, and then I'll be like, oh, like can you take like one more? And then it's like, yeah, and then I'll come back and be like, oh, okay, like one more actually, and she's like, it's never just one more.
Right.
But so like we've done it so often now that it really only takes like 10 minutes, and because of that, like, and I don't want to like abuse her time. It's become very like almost like a template. Like it's like I look in the same direction.
Yes, no, that's what I noticed. I was like, I mean, so you come up with these things through trial and error, right? Like I'm experiencing this now that I'm finally using my fucking tripod that I have had. Matt suggested, just go outside. I have a porch which is covered. I have a backyard which is not covered. The backyard I didn't even consider. It didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to me at all. And now it's like, oh, how fucking easy is this?
Right. It's like if I really wanted to, everything would look different, and in a perfect world, I would have it do that. But also, like, I am very conscious of that, like Emily, my girlfriend, like that this isn't exactly like what she wants to be doing on like a Saturday is spending an hour trying to get a different photo.
But that's how you know that she is a good person, because she doesn't fucking mind.
Right. Well, but so it has become, it's really, I always say that it emphasized that it really is just kind of like an archive of outfits and less so a photography account.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Because like I am not a photographer by any stretch of the word, but like I want my photos to look decent at the very least. But what I am taking down with the fit pics is like how I was feeling that morning, like what was going on.
Yeah.
It's a diary. It's a visual diary.
Right. And I always try to, it's also something where, like, to me, because I've gotten to the point now, so in the winter when it gets dark early and I can't, like, I miss out on the daylight after work, I really only take like 2 to 3 outfit photos a week. And so I always try to kind of like view the Instagram as something that I just continuously want to enjoy, as opposed to feeling like I have to do it. So like it's something where even if it's a Saturday, like family and I are going for like a long walk, if I just feel that stopping to take a photo would not ruin that, but like take away from that, I'm always kind of like, you know what? No, I don't need this right now. So I try to kind of update it at least 2 times a week, but at the same time, I like that it's a very casual thing and not something that I have to put a lot of effort into. So that's why I kind of have decided not to take it in the very photogenic photography route.
I mean, you say not very photogenic, but it looks fucking sick.
And
yeah.
You know,
it truly is.
It
truly is very good.
yeah, like it's as someone that for a long time took a lot of fucking outfit of the day photos for various internet things. Like it's nice that you can parse it out. That it's something that you enjoy, but it's not something you feel compelled to always do. And yeah, I mean it comes off like in a very aesthetically pleasing way. So, like the fact that the fact that you just kind of do it as you see fit, and it it is fun for you, that like that's rad because it also looks great.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I just like, isn't that old adage like you're supposed to put on the clothes and then forget you were wearing them or whatever, right? Like that's what's going on. It looks like obviously effort has been put into the photos, but it doesn't look like, it doesn't look try hard. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the goal that I want out of it too, because I also try to keep in mind where it's like I don't like dressing for a photo. It's kind of like, okay, if I'm wearing a good outfit that I really like, I'll take a photo of it. But
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to be hyper fixated on like, well, this should be an outfit that gets photographed.
Right. It's a very natural just extension of how you're feeling on whatever day that you take photos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wonder if I'll be able to sustain it every day. I guess we'll
yeah,
see.
good luck. Good luck. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you seem like a pretty confident user of the internet and marketing, which I guess speaks to your background on doing things. But but kind of what were your early experiences with like internet clothing subculture, for lack of a better word? Like before the before the Facebook page, like had you paid any mind to that whatsoever, or was that kind of like your introduction into the whole thing?
Um in terms of clothing specifically, I never really delved into anything before that Facebook page, and honestly, like even afterwards, like some of my very close friends now in the classic menswear scene are have very strong like connections to like MFA,
Right.
or like Style Forum and stuff like that. And I remember hearing about that and being like what is that? When for them, like a lot of their career interest was built off of those things. So now I did recently make a Reddit account and have been kind of like lurking on MFA and like Navy Blazer and stuff.
Mm.
I will admit that I like to lurk in a lot of places.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lurking is always
Mostly,
the best.
Yeah.
yeah. And to be quite honest, a lot of it is mostly just to see like what people are saying about J Press and
It's for
and
work, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also just to see like how people are using it and like what people are saying about current like industry trends or things like that I might know a different side of. But really, like I was influenced very little by menswear communities. But then in generally the internet and internet culture, like I was a very big Tumblr user through high school. And I like it didn't really have a theme, but I eventually kind of like culminated in like 30 something thousand followers, and that's when I was like, oh, maybe I'm pretty good at this.
Oh hell yeah.
um,
Mm.
yeah, and I kind of always was a little obsessed with like the idea of building a brand, whether that's like as a person or an actual brand online. And so like similar to like photography and clothes and stuff, like I've always been fascinated by, well, what now is kind of like social commerce and how that works, and like what, like not how to beat the algorithm, but like what even is the algorithm, and
Right.
like how much leverage, like can you leverage uh like an image and on Instagram or different platforms and see how it does. So like with my own Instagram, it's both like I enjoy it from the clothes aspect and kind of posting that, but also using it really as a uh, like experiment and seeing like, okay, well this does work, uh, like these tags work, this time, like this schedule of posting works, and
Right.
like what does that say, and how can I take that information and kind of like apply it to JPress. Um, so it's all kind of like trial and error and experimentation, and that's kind of how I view the internet and internet culture, which I like to think is healthy, um, as opposed to being obsessed with numbers and things like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a little bit more humanitarian isn't the right word, but like humanist maybe, to kind of like view it from the standpoint of like I'm not solely trying to do X number. Like I'm trying to figure out why people like certain things.
Right.
Like it's a little sociological in ways.
Yeah. And it always surprises me like that the outfits that I personally think, like how is like what you discussed about like the rugby shirt and stuff, like how I kind of think that that's kind of maybe not the most interesting thing. Like I'll post that and that will blow up, as opposed to an outfit that I like personally think is way better and not doing worse, and I like to kind of like think like, well, like why did that do that?
Right,
No,
right,
it's funny. Like when because I take a picture of my shit every day, right? But when I think it's a good one, like a lot of people do not. And then when I think it's like fine, a lot of people like it, to the extent that there are a lot of people who see the outfits that I post. But yeah, it's interesting. It is a little experiment. It's like a social media experiment every day.
Yeah.
So we talked about Ivy style. I was going to ask, one of the things that stands out to me about Ivy style is the little tweaks and affectations, the go to hell attitude, the socks, the Nantucket Reds, all of this stuff that people did, I guess, to stand out, right? From a million other blazers, a million other navy blazers, khakis, what have you. So I was wondering I don't know, what you thought about that, kind of things that you have adopted over the years, safety pin in the tie, this sort of stuff.
Um. Hmm. Well, to be quite honest, I'm not a huge like, so the go to hell stuff, like especially like critter pants or like bright pastels and things like that. Personally am not a huge fan of, at least at this current moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
I definitely gravitate towards very muted things, even like when I think that it's something colorful, and then I see it in a full outfit and I'm like, oh, this is still just very muted. Um, so like the go to hell stuff, I'm starting to get more into, in terms of like bright colors in some form or another, specifically like socks. Um, and maybe even like with ties. But I personally always like a good club collar with the safety pin. Um,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I really love that.
I always think that it just has to be very subtle. Like I think it goes back to that kind of like just wanting to exist in the clothes, not necessarily like doing it to look photogenic or like stand out or something, because then it ends up looking like gaudy.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people either like make it or break it, where it, like with Sprezzatura, like the whole point of it is that you're not trying. And so
Right.
I think when people try to do it, then you just fail. Like it's kind of like you just have to like not notice it. Which like I did the other day. Like I washed an Oxford shirt and the buttons came undone, and then I just put it on to go to work and then realized halfway through the day that the buttons were undone. And I was like, oh, like that probably looked pretty cool because I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that there's also kind of like there are a lot of like misconceptions surrounding Ivy and like and canonically like what actually was common, because so much of the photos that exist were all cherry picked. And so even things with affectations, like yes, it was captured in a moment, but I mean, depending on the photo, I'm sure that the person wearing it was unaware that like the collar was unbuttoned, or that their tie tail was longer than like the front blade and things like that. And that's what makes it look cool. So not that I think or suggest kind of like staying away from those small affectations is better, but it loses the magic when you're aware of it.
Yeah, there's definitely ways to like pick up on certain things and they feel natural to you, but there's also like, you know, 1,000 other motherfuckers that are trying to do the same thing to stand out and make it a thing. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, that's not really what the origins would really be. Like, personally, if I'm wearing a shirt and jacket, I don't button my sleeve cuffs because it's uncomfortable to me. That's just
Yeah.
something I've done forever, and it's like, you know, yeah, there's certain things that you can adopt and that you pick up over time, but it's not like you're trying to be Alan fucking Flusser.
Right. And it's also I think really like the quote unquote best um affectations and or like small details really come from either like trying to achieve comfort or out of necessity.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
even something that I do, like how I said previously that I have all of these shirts from my friend who is like 2 sizes larger than me. The I can almost never get the sleeve length right on anything. So even with some of the shirts that are just like way too long, I'll just take the cuff and flip it back and then button it. So if I were to take like my jacket off, like you would see that it's kind of wonky.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it looks like a little French cuff though. I've done that before. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like the ones that I kind of gravitate toward, like the kind of standard ones, are like the collar pin, kind of like bright colored socks. Uh, Mostly those two.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And like you obviously don't put a shitload of thought into it, but you like these things and you've kind of like worked them into your clothing regimen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always funny to me too, like what exactly I always come back to, because I
Right.
have so many now bright colored socks, but yet I always choose like the blue. And I've had like yellow socks for over a year and I've only worn them once.
Right. Yeah.
You got to break them out.
Yeah.
It's all about trial and error and just like figuring out what you like, and some things that you think you like yellow socks, you end up just not giving a shit about.
Yeah. Granted, I also understand that a lot of people like don't have, one, the money, two, the interest in buying a ton of socks just to see that only one works.
Right. Yeah. True.
Yeah.
True. I'm a big fan of like all cotton white athletic socks, so that's where I usually go.
Yeah.
So you kind of, you know, belong to a part of a subculture within like tailored clothing, right? Like you're not no offense, the most traditional kind of person that works in the industry, at least from my experience. How how have you navigated that as being someone that obviously has a passion for this, but is not your everyday Joe Schmo that you run into?
Yeah, so the one question that I constantly kind of am asked, whether it's in an interview or if it's DM'd or just in conversation, is so like what's a, like explain being like a woman in menswear,
Right.
which
Which
I've never.
there are a lot of.
Yeah.
In my experience, they're just not always as forward facing as you are.
Yeah, and I sometimes lately I've been not taking issue with that kind of like terminology, I guess.
Right.
But I do identify as non-binary, and so
Yeah.
and there's a very different experience from that and the way that I present myself versus someone who is very feminine.
Right.
And so it is unique. Like I had a conversation with one of my coworkers last week, I think, like where she is very feminine, and kind of comparing both of our experiences as just generally like a non-man in the industry, but also then the differences between my experience as someone masculine, and hers as very feminine. And both of them kind of have their similarities and differences that I think make them very unique experiences, and is a reason why I don't really like to comment on what it is like being like a woman in menswear, because I truly don't have a lot of those experiences that define that. But as someone who is non-binary in classic menswear, it's definitely been interesting because you kind of fall, at least for someone like me who is traditionally like a bit more masculine, feminine, between being not like quote unquote not a woman, but also not being like one of the guys.
Right.
Which is a very odd place to be, because it's almost kind of like cherry picked what you are included in culturally. Even down to like just my peers in the industry, and some of like the conversations they have, or if it's like a an event and it's kind of like, oh, like all like let's all like get like a bro pick, and I'm usually not included in that, and I don't see any kind of malice in that, but there are still a lot of kind of blind biases that people have,
right,
that even if you are the most, or what you feel is kind of like the like quote like wokest person, like it's just societal, so it just exists.
Sadly.
And I like to kind of point out occasionally, like just in conversation with like people that I'm a bit closer to, like if they say or do something where I'm like, well, that's not really like not appropriate, but I this is my perception of that, and then they're always kind of like, oh, I would have never thought about it from that point of view. Like even something as simple as like, speaking of Robert, not specifically like Robert Scalera, but like his like the menswear industry that he grew up in, and the type of people that kind of existed in the industry then. Like I was talking to one of my other like colleagues kind of around the same age, who has also been in the industry for a very long time, and he was like, yeah, I mean, like there were always a lot of straight men, a lot of gay men, like a lot of like various like diverse like ethnicities and stuff. And he's like, but like I really can't remember anybody who was either like a lesbian or a non-binary person in the industry.
Right.
And so I think that it's really a new phenomenon for people to be involved in the industry that aren't just traditionally a man. And I think that people are really open to that. But like I said, there are a lot of kind of hidden biases that come out.
Oh, totally, totally. I also
And
identify
one
as
of them being
non-binary, and like it's one of those things that, like, I don't know, for people at a certain age, the words back in the day, and so like the fact that you're thriving as someone of that identity in the modern day is kind of amazing.
Yeah, honestly, me too. I always kind of and it's always funny talking to people. Like, one, like I'm very bad at taking compliments, but two, like talking to people who are like, oh, like you're such an inspiration, and I'm kind of like, am I? Like, I was like, I'm just existing, but I guess that is inspiring.
Person.
Yeah. But it is also kind of like interesting too. Like I do have somewhat of a background in like queer theory and things like that, just in the industry as a whole, and the way that menswear and women's wear is kind of like seeping into or kind of becoming inching closer and closer to each other, where for a long time, like what was considered unisex clothing or like androgynous is really just boxy, traditionally men's cuts of things. Like,
ugly shit, so ugly. The stuff is so ugly.
Yeah, and you wouldn't see like a skirt in that.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, why not? Because it's just a piece of clothing. Like, why does androgyny and unisex have to really primarily just reflect men and menswear as opposed to like femininity? And so like stuff like that, or even things like again, going back to that whole my weird kind of like relationship with like being a woman in menswear, it's kind of like, and again, like a lot of this is never really intended to be harmful. It's just an unconscious bias, but people referring to me as like the best dressed woman in menswear, and it's kind of like, all right, maybe.
Well, that's
like,
shitty,
but it's
right?
also kind of like, why can't I be the best dressed person in menswear?
Yeah,
right. It's really not fucking difficult.
And so, yeah, and it does. It kind of unconsciously puts people into boxes, because then it's like, okay, well, is my limit of success just reaching that threshold of like the best dressed woman in menswear, when there's more beyond that?
Breach the glass ceiling. Yeah.
So those are just kind of two examples of many that I've seen.
Of course. With anything, you know, in the modern age too, yes, it's gonna get past this stupid point that we're somehow stuck in. And you know, you're like, hopefully people in stop doing that shit. Like, you're making a name for yourself as yourself.
Right. And also the kind of the expectation of what someone in the industry looks like. Like how I was saying, like my one colleague and I were kind of comparing our two experiences, and this is something that I'm not going to say like would never, because anything's possible, but like there's a very slim chance that this would happen to me, even though I'm also like not a man. But she was at an event and someone came up to her and they're like, oh, like, are you someone's girlfriend? And she's like, no, like I work in the industry. And so it's just like those, again, like unconscious assumptions that just because it's like you're a woman and you're here, that you're not involved.
Right. Because you would never ask that question. Like,
yeah,
you would never, you know, like there are plenty of women and non-men that have designed menswear over the years. Like, you would never go up to a dude at a Ralph Lauren party and be like, "Oh, like, what are you doing here?" They're putting dudes on women's wear collections. Like, can't we just get past this shit?
Yeah, and I think it's always those unconscious like assumptions, and which totally. because being someone again like who's like not a man in menswear, like it is kind of always a battle of proving yourself until you get to a point where like you're someone like Emily Bodie where you're very identifiable and and people know who you are, as opposed to someone like if like a guy who's like an assistant merchant at like Todd shows up to an event, people are just going to automatically assume that you work there and kind of engage with you, as opposed to being like a woman and then having to kind of really push to be noticed.
Man, that was a very enlightening discussion about being a non-man in the clothing industry. So I thank you.
Yeah, I enjoy talking about that, and I kind of rarely do.
Totally.
Yeah, that was one thing that we wanted to be sure you had a space for.
Yeah, we're just people that love clothes, and I don't give a shit what anyone's gender or anything is, as long as they like clothes and they're cool. Like that's kind of that's kind of how we approach things, and how I wish
we have no barrier to entry.
Right, no, and that's kind of what it should be.
Absolutely.
So to kind of wrap up, we have a series of questions about stuff, your stuff. So I was going to ask you for my own sort of reserves. Do you have any eBay search alerts set up? Do you have a white whale you are constantly seeking?
So again, going back to that, I'm maybe not the kind of like archetype of someone who's an enthusiast in menswear. I have no search alerts set up. I always say I like to like window shop on eBay.
That's the most fun.
Yeah, where I don't have search alerts set up, to be quite honest, because it might be just because I'm too lazy to take that extra step. But there are like a few like I always kind of go in and I'll search like 1950s small, and then see what pops up, or like vintage polo.
Dude,
that's a big one.
The best things come from like the most generic of searches, because like you find something that someone else has not seen yet because the listing description is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just like, holy shit, like this is something that I love, and no one has bought it for the month that it's been listed.
Right. However, like me and my like ADHD and like filling the void with clothes, I always end up, I'm always like, oh, like this is something like that nobody's found, like I'm gonna buy it just because they haven't found it yet, which is not the way to go about building a wardrobe. And that is also how you get stuck in a very small square footage apartment with clothes in every corner, like me. But
a wonderful New York experience.
Yeah, but in terms of like a white whale item, like I guess it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Like I've always wanted like a 30s belt back jacket. However, then I did recently find one that was pretty much like perfect, and then I was like, do I actually need this?
Right.
So I feel like I feel like I'm constantly kind of like creating white whales to just to give me something to search for.
It's the hunt. It really is. It's like you're searching and searching and searching. It's brain chemicals too. You know, Matt is subject to my like manic searching. It's so invigorating.
Yes, but that's also like my friend and colleague Nick and I were kind of talking.
Sure.
And
I met him. Yeah.
He's great, and we were
Shout
both
out Nick.
discussing like how many shirts we think we own, and
Oh, that was in the Discord. I asked that question in the sad Discord.
oh, well then I was like, I don't want to be. Both of us were kind of sitting there, and we were both kind of like, I don't want to even be thinking about this question because I was kind of like betting that we have about the same. He thinks that he has more, but I think personally I have to have like combining t-shirts and like like button down shirts. I probably have to have like 200.
Oh my god, no way. See,
Yeah.
dude, because Ethan Wong said he had 65.
Oh, that kind of surprises me.
Me fucking too. And there's this dude on the chat who has like 60 some. I have about that many. I mean, not all of mine are like nice, you know, but they're here, and I have culled the ones that were unpleasant to me. But I think it's a very valid question because it's like shirts probably people have the most of.
Yeah, definitely. And it, and that's not even me exaggerating. I'm sure like Emily, my girlfriend, would probably even say that I have even more because it's like I've been trying to kind of like sell off stuff, and I probably sold maybe like 15, 20 things over the weekend, and it hasn't made any difference.
Yeah.
So
such is the life for a connoisseur.
A clothes horse. Yeah,
a clothes horse. Yes. So, Laura, what is your favorite and or oldest piece that you have?
I think the oldest that I have is probably, I guess maybe this one sweater that's from like the turn of the century. Like
wow. Yeah.
A shawl collar pullover. Not cardigan. I wish white whale. I wish I had a good like 1920s shawl collar cardigan.
Okay, I'm gonna have to remember that.
Yeah, but that's probably the old, at least the of what I know the date to be the oldest.
Right.
I don't think I have. Actually, I think I actually have it like an Edwardian like tuxedo vest, but it's just like it's missing the rest of the tuxedo.
Right.
And I just kind of acquired it through someone like half the things that I own are just things that have been given to me.
Of course.
But yeah, that's definitely the oldest.
Okay. And what about favorite? If you can name it. I know it's hard.
I was gonna say, I feel like I always kind of view like there's a difference between like favorite and then most worn thing.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think my favorite thing that I have, actually I know what it is. It's and it's a recent thing. It's my Fox flannel 2-piece suit that I got for free from J-Press.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's the only thing. Like my room is a total or where I keep all my clothes like a total disaster, and that's the one thing I like that's on the singular wooden hanger that I have that I'm like the shoulders on this can't get messed up, and then it's just like hanging on the closet so that nothing bad ever happens to it.
Yeah. Respect. I have also never been one to really organize my shit as much as I should. So
I just put my final thing onto a wooden hanger. So it just I don't know why the fuck I do the things that I do. I don't have anything really that needs to be on a wooden hanger. I mean, obviously the tailored stuff should not be on plastic hangers in general.
Hey man, as long as you're not using wire hangers for shit, then I think it's acceptable.
I feel like
Yeah.
I think everything should, in a perfect world, everything should be on a wooden hanger.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
It's just
this is
not. It's
not really
just
the
not
world we live in.
plastic.
Well, Laura, this has been a really fun conversation, and thank you for coming on. We always like to give our guests a chance to shout out something, so this is yours. Have at it.
Oh, like anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we said your Instagram account in the or Connor said it in the intro, but whatever you want to shout out, you're good to go.
Oh, I didn't. Now I'm like.
No,
like,
no. It's okay.
Yeah, no
like,
pressure, no pressure. We're just
Yeah.
we're just letting you promote whatever you want to promote yourself, something else. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Well, I
Press,
guess
you
if
have-
I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
guess if I want to use this as like maybe like a mild self promotion, but also like constantly thinking of JPress, there is a pretty fun photo shoot that I have now put together and like campaign that I'm shooting in like the next couple of weeks that I think is very different from what we have done in the past. And so I would say be on the lookout for that because I'm hoping that that gets some notice.
Hell yeah. We will. Well, we'll certainly promote it on our fledgling Instagram. And yeah, that's rad. And what's your Instagram handle again, just in case people want to see your phenomenal fit pics?
It's at Reaper Sower.
Awesome.
Which is a great one. Which is truly a great one. I mean,
yeah.
My girlfriend was like, "That's probably a religious person."
Well, it's really funny because so many people are like, "Oh, like where'd that come from?" or like, "Why that?" And I'm like, honestly, it was kind of a complete accident.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
I was kind of like in college, like I really someday want to have my own brand, and I maybe jumped the gun a little bit in college of like trademarking Reaper and Company, and because
that's a good one.
Honestly, just because I really love Halloween, and I was like, okay, that's
totally
reminiscent of that, and then the sower part kind of came in because I was like, okay, from like keeping things cohesive, like if I were to have a blog, like what would I name it where it still somewhat makes sense with Reaper and Company? So
right.
I was like, well, Reaper and sower go together.
Dude,
so
that's a solid handle.
Yeah,
I will give
really
you that.
Is.
Yeah, it is very funny though now to me of people identifying me as my handle and not my name.
Right. Yeah. Comes with the territory.
Yeah.
The life of an internet celebrity.
Right. Well, Laura, thank you again. Everyone, keep an eye out for the JPress campaign. It's going to be sick, I am sure, and much better than the York Street shit that they did in like 2013.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's an entirely different conversation. But anyway, everyone, thank you for listening. We're at Apocalypse Studs on Instagram, apocalypsestuds@gmail.com, which thankfully we finally gotten a message.
We got a couple. We've
gotten a couple of emails, so
yes.
I will retire this stupid.
Rejoice.
I'm Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues.
And I'm Connor Fowler at Connor Fowler with one N.
And yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you soon.